What's up, besties? It's your girl Morgan here, and you're listening to Your Internet Best Friend. What's up, besties? It is me. Hopefully you recognize this voice by now, but I'm excited for this podcast. If you're wondering why I look like I'm in my sweatpants and just chilling and not in a hot pink blazer like normal. I got back from Chicago last night, had a fun little getaway adventure, and then I woke up this morning and look, I have been gone nonstop, traveled all of September, basically all of this month, was in Boston, then flew home, went straight to Chicago. Finally, and I don't know how this has not happened sooner, my body just quit on me. I woke up and did not feel well. I've quite the sore throat. I think we're going to be doing okay, but I managed to slap on some makeup. I said, the show must go on. You know what I need to do? I need to do a solo podcast today, but all I can manage is sweatpants. So that's where we're at. Look, I'm not a perfect person, but I'm still here showing up. And today, a lot of people, I'm sure, want a little life update. So I'll give a quick one, but I'm not going to go into too many details. I asked on my Instagram story yesterday, I was like, what topic does everyone want for the next solo podcast? Give me some ideas. A lot of people, I'd say 90% of the people were like, give us the tea on why you were in Chicago and all that. And I could do that. I very much could do that. But I'm not going to do that. Mainly because, well, not mainly, but one, I got to keep y'all coming back to this podcast because now you're going to keep listening, wondering when I'm going to drop some information. And two, I was talking to my mom, catching up on the weekend and all that. And she gave me a pretty good piece of life advice because it's hard navigating my life when I'm in the public eye and when I care about someone or when new things happen. I often struggle with, what do I share? What do I put out there? And she gave me some advice and she said, you should keep private the things that matter most to you. And look, guys, I'm really, really bad at keeping things private, but I kind of took her advice and I was like, you know what? I'm going to actually think about that one. And with this, yes, I was obviously in Chicago with another person, with a guy. Yes, it was hot Aussie Ibiza cruise man. And I'm just going to leave it at that. I had a great time. I had so much fun. I am now back in Nashville. And I don't know what's going on in my life. I don't know what the next steps are. I don't know what the future looks like for me. And guess what? That's all I have to say. I was kind of stressing out driving over to the studio to record this podcast because I was like, oh my God, everyone wants a life update. What do I fill them in on? And I kind of just realized that's the only life update I got. So instead of going into the nitty gritty details of my love life and trying to have this crystal ball where, look, I would love a crystal ball in my life where I could predict the future. Trust me. But instead of coming on a podcast and trying to finagle and mastermind my life in front of a live audience and tell you all these details and things potentially to change, because right now there's just so much unknown going on, I'm not going to do that. Instead, eventually, I'm sure that I will. And I'm sure I'll keep dropping little Easter eggs here and there. But instead, I'm going to do another little topic that was a highly requested topic. And we're going to talk about MTV's The Challenge and my experience in season 1. I did Storytime X on the Beach edition. This time we're going to do Storytime The Challenge War of the Worlds edition. So if you're listening to this podcast and just tuning in for the very first time, hi, hello, I'm Morgan, your internet best friend. I have a feeling you're not probably just stumbling upon this episode being a new listener. But for those who don't know this, I was on reality TV. I was on Big Brother. Then I did X on the Beach. Then I did The Challenge. And as much as I really don't love talking about reality TV, I hate the idea of sounding like a broken record or being like the girl who peaked in high school, except it's like the girl who peaked on reality TV. I really don't ever want to do that. I like to think that I keep going on an upward trajectory with my life where things keep getting better and I keep doing more cool and exciting things. But I will say it is a very interesting part of my life. I feel like it is something that very few people can say that they did. Was 3 reality TV shows. And a lot of you guys listening have discovered me from reality TV. So I figured, you know what? We got to talk about The Challenge at least once. And it was either I talk about my love life or I talk about The Challenge. And guess which one won? The Challenge. In my experience, I lasted 2 whole weeks on the show. So it was very short-lived, but let's just talk about it from the beginning. I want to walk you guys through what it is like being on The Challenge, what it is like filming, how I got cast, what it's like getting eliminated, and why the hell I won't go back, because I've seen the messages and everyone's like, do it. You deserve a second chance. You would kick ass. I do agree with all of that. But you know what? I'd rather protect my mental health and continue making money being my own boss versus slaving away for MTV. Anywho, let's rewind back to, I think this is 2018. So I went on the show in 2018. If you have not listened to the X on the Beach story time, I recommend going back to season 1 and listening to that, because it's going to make a lot more sense as to how I got into this situation. But how I got cast on the challenge, I had filmed for 5 weeks X on the Beach. I remember maybe a week before we wrapped filming, I had a producer pull me aside in our house in Malibu, and they said that the challenge was interested in putting me on the next season. And immediately I was ecstatic. I was like, yes, sold, did not ask questions. Basically, my main goal behind going on X on the Beach is I wanted to get pulled to the challenge. Like, that was the show that I wanted to do. No, I did not just wake up one day and decide my life goal and new aspiration was to be the star of X on the Beach. No, but I knew in order to get on the challenge, this was back then before they started pulling from like Big Brother and other CBS shows. But back then you had to be on another MTV show, and then they would pull you from that and put you on the challenge. So that was my goal. And you know what? That lucky girl syndrome apparently started way back in 2018, because I was the only person from my cast on X on the Beach that got the call to go film the challenge, which was, it was called The Challenge War of the Worlds, and it was filming in Africa. Here's where the story got a little bit sticky and complicated. Instead of having a month to prep and train like I'm sure everyone else had, I had 2 whole days. So I was in the X on the Beach house. I signed the contract. Like, I think that was the only time I was allowed to have my phone back, was to call my agent, sign the contract, basically sign my life away to MTV. And then I got out of the house. I had 2 days to come home, call my parents, tell them what was going on, unpack my stuff that from 5 weeks of filming in Malibu, and then somehow repack, get shots, do psych tests, do all this crazy stuff, and then hop on a flight and fly my ass to Africa. It was wild. And I just remember, obviously things got complicated because, as you know, listening to the X on the Beach episode, I did leave the house in a quote unquote relationship at the time from X on the Beach, which is what really just complicated my life, because in those 2 days I should have been figuring out what I was going to do with this, relationship that started on TV, but then kind of went to real world. But then I had to go film another TV show. So, I mean, not saying I have an excuse for everything that went down. If you're like, Morgan, what went down? All you have to do is go to YouTube, type in Morgan lie detector test, and you can figure out what I'm talking about. But in the 48 hours, it was not at the top of my list to figure out what I was going to do with my relationship. I remember like at 11 p.m. at night in those 2 days, I was like doing sprints outside of my apartment in LA, because I really thought in 2 whole days I could somehow whip myself into shape and be challenge ready. That is not true. But I somehow made it, and then went to LAX. And my season, which I don't know if you've watched War of the Worlds, but the premise was they brought on a whole new bunch of rookies. And then we flew to Africa, and then we met up with the vets. So I just remember going to LAX and being so nervous. I did not know what to expect. Again, I wanted to be on the challenge. Had I watched any seasons of the challenge? No. Same with Big Brother. You would think I would start learning my lesson by being on reality TV. It's like, maybe I should watch the shows that I go on. Had never seen Big Brother. I also was on the challenge, and I had never watched the challenge. So I show up, and I was just freaking out. I didn't know any of the people. I had heard rumors. I just remember I get there and I see Maddie from Party Down South. I think she did a few seasons of the challenge. I ran into the Nolan twins from Big Brother. And picture this, me being the over-preparing type A organized girl, wanted to hit the ground running. I thought we were going to have to get off the plane and do a challenge. Like, I don't know why in my head, I just assumed wherever they were flying us, we didn't know. The second I walked off that plane, I was going straight into an arena, like a gladiator or something. So I walk up and I've got this massive Under Armour backpack. I'm wearing Under Armour leggings. I'm wearing layers. I've got an Under Armour like waterproof jacket. I am ready to compete. And I look at everyone else, all the other rookies, and they're in like sweatpants. So of course they're probably like, who is this girl? Does she think we're competing in the airport going through TSA? So like that was kind of embarrassing, but also just like very on brand for me. I really was convinced I was going on this challenge and I was going to win it all. So I was taking it very seriously. Plot twist. Again, we made it. I think I was there 14 days. So we fly from LA to Johannesburg. And then we met up with some of the other cast. So my season was like a bunch of American rookies, and then they brought in some UK rookies. And I just remember we met up with everyone in Johannesburg, which is in Africa. So I've been sitting on an airplane for like 14 hours. And I just remember being confused. And that's a common theme when I go onto these shows. I get there and I see the other people and I'm like, why am I here? Like I just always feel very normal. And I really realized that when we're on a bus and there was a rookie on our season, Ninja Natalie, who was from American Ninja Warrior. Great competitor, cool chick. But I just remember we get on the bus and she is hanging from the pole like upside down, like doing pull-ups. And I just remember I'm like, at this point, I'm really not mentally stable from filming for 5 weeks and going through the torture of X on the beach. And then I hadn't slept on the plane. So by the time I get to Africa, I am not well. And I just remember looking at Ninja Natalie being like, what the hell am I doing? Like, it's too late. I signed the contract. Like, I am in Africa. I am here to compete. But I just remember in that moment, I was like, uh-oh, buckle up, Buttercup, because this might not be an easy one. So from Johannesburg, then it's so crazy because you don't start filming right away. So plot twist, I was in all my Under Armour. We did not get off the plane and go immediately to a challenge. They bussed us a couple of different places. We ended up flying to Nambia. If you're like, where is Nambia? Let me tell you, it's in the middle of nowhere in Africa. Legitimately, the middle of nowhere. It is known for like sand dunes. It's actually really cool to be able to say that you lived in Namibia, Africa for a bit. Like most people can't do that. So we go to Namibia and they put all the rookies on a bus. I just remember being sleep deprived, nervous, not knowing what to expect, when we were going to meet the vets. They put us in a tent. They drop us off in the middle of these sand dunes. There's a tent waiting for us and they say, have fun. And I'm like, excuse me? There's no shower. There's a porta potty. There's a bunch of bunks and there is a tent in the middle of the sand dunes. And they tell us nothing. There's no information. There's no when we're going to leave. There's no when we're going to get our stuff. There's no when we're going to move in the house, when the challenge is. They literally just ditch us there and they say, all right, you're going to stay here the night. Have fun. And they leave. And I'm like, what? Like, what happened to like the cool house that you see on the challenge with hot tubs and all these cool rooms and it has an epic view? I was like, my ass really got on the season where they ditched us in a tent in the middle of Namibia. I was like, this is unfair. But so we're staying there. We're all in the clothes and the face of makeup that we had been wearing for the past 24 hours. So think the smoky eye I had on, that was left over from LA 24 hours ago. Luckily, it actually worked out in my favor. I was wearing sneakers and like my Under Armour getup. I remember one of the rookies, Georgia, was like, she was in like a skirt, a sweater, and like chunky. I mean, she looked darling, cute little UK girl, but she was not prepared to sleep in a bunk bed in the middle of the desert. So let's see, my first impressions of people. And these are some people who have gone on to go a couple challenges. Some people were never seen again, like myself. I just remember looking at the UK, like the British kids being like, these people are insane. Like just absolutely insane. They don't need sleep. They have no filter. There's no volume control on these kids, which makes total sense as to why they were put on the show. Me, on the other hand, I'm like huddled up in my little bunk trying to get sleep because in my head, I'm like, we got to compete. She is in 8 hours of sleep. Girly, plot twist, I was not sleeping much. I just remember I immediately loved Maddie. From Party Down South. I was like, that's going to be someone I really connect with. I had such a mad crush on Theo. He was another UK person. I thought he was so cute. And then I just remember being utterly terrified of this guy named Turbo. So when we get there, it's like, everyone's mingling. We're having fun. And I just remember Turbo Just look him up. Okay. I don't even know how to describe him, but his name says it all. Who names their kid Turbo? That might not be his real name, but he's just in the corner bunk. And I remember at first I thought he was like a security guard, like working on set. And then I was like, oh, no. He's actually here to compete with us. He was just quiet and like sitting in the corner, like not associating with anyone. Like bro was there to compete. Terrifying. So we spend the night. It is frigid, as you can imagine, being in a tent in the middle of the sand dunes. You think it would be hot. No. It gets like 30 degrees at night. We wake up the next morning and all of a sudden we're just like kind of wandering around. It is really strange. Like when you think about it, you would think that there's camera crews and all these people. There's really not. Like we were kind of just stuck there with a couple crew members. And then all of a sudden they kind of like line us up. I'm like, what the hell is going on? And then we hear like ATVs, like loud engines, and like TJ swoops in, and then all the vets come. And it actually was crazy. And that's when I kind of realized, I was like, oh, all right, here, like it's starting. Like now's go time. Okay, so we see the vets coming in. And these are veterans who had been on the show for quite some time. Guests who had not seen a single episode of the challenge and did not know who any of these people were. But lucky for me, before I went on, my sister and my friend are huge fans of the challenge. So they gave me cliff notes on each person. And I actually have the notes. I was looking through my iCloud this morning. I have the notes still that I have saved. It was a shared notes. And it was from October 16th, 2018. Here was what they suggested for my strategy. It did not work because I got eliminated second. Tips on how to get your money. Play the dumb, confused rookie blonde to your enemies, and then play up how you're a physical force to your allies. Always have a scapegoat. What else did they say? Oh, here's what they broke down the girls. Ashley, the Lavender Ladies leader. She won Final Reckoning. She hates Kara. She fights with almost everyone. Okay. We have notes. Jenna's known as Barbie Beast. Let's get to the guys. Hunter hates bananas. I wouldn't have known that. This is what they said about a cast member named Bananas. Need I say anything? You don't want to know. Well, that should have maybe, I don't know, red flag. But Leroy, Bananas minion. Okay, anyways, you get the gist. I had a breakdown of all these different TV characters, their roles on the show, all this stuff. Did I listen to any of it? No, I don't even think I read it until 30 seconds before I had to give my phone to producers. So, okay, so we see the vets and then they say, all right, you're going to do your first challenge. And the first challenge, essentially, they took us at the top of a sand dune. It sounds really crazy. It was actually very difficult. They dropped balls down this sandy mountain. You had to go run, get a ball, run down the mountain, and then do a puzzle. And I was like, well, I'm pretty quick. And I'm also really good at puzzles. So maybe this will work out in my favor. And I just remember people trying to run down these sand dunes and just eating shit. Because it's sandy and you're trying to run basically straight downhill. And all I remember is I was like, all right, Morgan, you're going to be on national TV. Please, for the love of God, just get a ball and get down the mountain without face planting. And luckily I did. And I actually, not to brag on myself, but am really good at puzzles. So I ended up being the second girl finished. Ninja Natalie, the one hanging from the little bus, she got first. I got second. And I was really proud. And thank the Lord, because on all these challenges, the last person to complete it actually just goes home. So I just remember, I was like, Morgan, dear God, that will be so incredibly embarrassing. Do not be the first person kicked off. So luckily I was not. I got second and we didn't know what was going to happen to that. It turns out because I got second, I got to pick my partner. So the rookies, us little noobs, got to pick a vet partner. Here's where my story gets a little sticky. Because do you know who I picked? I did not listen to my friend's advice. I did not listen to my sister's advice, who very clearly, she told me, if you get to pick a partner, pick CT. Whatever you do, pick CT. What did I do? I didn't listen. I picked my ex. So I picked Voldemort. If you know, you know. If you don't know, you can go obviously see who I was partnered with. But look, I stand behind that. Do I regret it? No. Do I think I would have gotten further in the game and potentially maybe, I don't know, won? Possibly if I picked someone else. But look, hindsight's 2020. I can go, what if the situation, be like, well, what if I picked Wes, or what if I picked CT? Would I have won? Would I have continued doing the challenge? What if I wouldn't have dated someone on the challenge? Where would I be in life? Look, I can't do any of that. I picked who I picked because they had won more than anyone else. I picked who I picked because I did not know the background of the show. I did not know how many vendettas they had and other people had against them. I just was pretty clueless. So in my head, I was like, I'm going to pick the person I know has won the most. And maybe I did have a bit of a crush. Like when I first saw them, especially, look, as we've figured out on this podcast, I tend to be a red flag magnet. If I know someone is crossing a boundary for some odd reason, I am like intrigued. Instead, I should be like running the other direction. Anyways, it's something we're working on. And something I've gotten much better at by the time I've reached 29. At this time, let's keep in mind, when I was on the show, I was 24 years old. I was a wee little baby. Who put me on reality TV as a 24-year-old? But anyways, I get to pick second. I have all the vets lined up in front of me. The world is my oyster. Who do I pick? Voldemort. So it is what it is. And then we move in the house. Let's talk about this house, because I feel like on the challenge, when you watch it as a big fan, the houses look sick. They look epic. And they are decorated really cool. I'll have to go rewatch our season to see how they made this house look cool. The house we were in, I don't know about other seasons, atrocious. It was atrocious. Essentially, it was a compound, one story, plopped down in the middle of nowhere in Nambia. There was no view. There was no outdoor pool. I really walked in and I was like, this is what they gave me on my season. I look at all these other houses and they're in Thailand and they've got infinity pools. And I'm like, I'm in a compound in Africa. Okay. So there's like bunk beds, and I just kind of like pick a random bunk bed to sleep in. We've got like a little kitchen area. There's more bunk beds. There's like a small little outdoor area. And we did have like an indoor pool, but it was like completely enclosed. Anyways, I just remember being like, this is atrocious. And I stand behind that. I think I unfortunately had the worst challenge house in history of the challenge. You challenge historians, if you're listening to this, please feel free to correct me. But what made it the worst too is the mosquitoes. To the point where I had so many mosquito bites on my face that a doctor looked at me and thought that I had chickenpox. That's how bad it was. There was also, wait, hang on. I just have to remember the trauma that this was. There was no air conditioning. There was no AC in a house in Africa. So as you can imagine, it's hot. There's no airflow. And there's so many mosquitoes that when you would lift up your blanket in your bunk bed, mosquitoes would just fly out of your bed. I could not sleep because I would just hear little buzzes in my ear. Oh my God, it's like actually very triggering. I'm like shaking and twitching thinking about it, to the point it was so bad in that house. There was one night where I just could not sleep. And y'all know, as listening to this podcast, I'm a pretty nitpicky sleeper. Could not sleep. It was so hot. I took a pillow and I got a lounge chair and a blanket and I slept outside in Africa. That's how bad it was. It was to the point where finally we were requesting like mosquito repellents that you would stick on the walls. And I was sleeping with them on my forehead, which I'm sure that's a lot of toxins just dripping into my brain, through my bloodstream and my brain cells. I literally slept with a mosquito repellent sticker on my forehead. It did not help. I heard rumor was once I got eliminated, they actually did bring in portable AC units and it did help a little bit. But guess what? My 2 weeks there, did not get that. And then what a lot of people don't realize on the challenge is they bring in food for you. So it is catered. You don't have to cook, which is nice. So every single morning, every meal, they set up like a basic big buffet and you go through and you get your food. Okay, so they set that up for you, but guess what they don't do? They don't clean it up for you. And guess who is not doing dishes in the house? a bunch of challenge members. So we would just have stacks and stacks of dirty food plates just by the sink. And I just remember there were flies everywhere. And I think they stayed there, the dirty plates. And I believe they would have people come clean the house maybe once a week. So then it would get cleaned up there. But I just remember it being absolutely vile. So that was something that I remembered. What else do people not know about the challenge house? Oh, the booze. So the main purpose in that house is to get as drunk as possible. So producers will come in, not every night. I don't think like before a challenge, and they'll just like bring in bottles of wine. And I swear people flock to these producers like hyenas. Like it's like people who have never, like imagine you're dehydrated and parched in a desert and someone comes to bring you a bottle of water. That is like what it was like when they brought in booze to the challenge house, because you're low-key stressed, you're miserable, you just want to get drunk, and it would be like the cheapest of the cheap wine and beer, and people would just hoard it. So I remember, drinking a lot of really shitty African wine and hanging out outside. And you know what? There was one night when we had all been drinking a lot and I was talking to my partner, Voldemort, and obviously cameras were on us, all this crazy stuff. And they're like filming our conversations, and the rest of the house they cut you off from alcohol at a certain point when they're like, all right, no more. But him and I were chatting, like kind of, I guess, like flirty banter. And then I remember him being like, oh, well, like, why don't you go ask the producer for more wine? And I was like, okay. Like at this point, I'm like kind of drunk. So I like skip off and I was like, there's no way they're going to give it to me. Tell me why. I asked them for more wine. And this is after everyone had been begging them. Everyone wants more booze. But me, a rookie, goes up. I was like, can I get some more wine? And they give me a bottle. Why do you think that is? A little like light bulbs going off in my head. Maybe it's because I was a rookie and they knew that I was about to make a really dumb decision that's going to make for really good TV. So that's just like a funny realization of how on TV things can be, I don't want to say misconstrued, but how there can be influence from producers to get you to, I don't know, maybe do things that you normally wouldn't, or say things that you wouldn't, or I don't know. I think that night I actually did. That was the night they played a clip of me like walking into the bedroom with Voldemort, and everyone said that we hooked up. Look, here, I guarantee you I would tell you on my own podcast the truth if I actually did hook up with him in the challenge house, and I didn't. But that was the night when they did give me more alcohol than everyone else, that I did like sleep in the same bed as him. But it was so hot and there was no AC and there were so many mosquitoes that I was so miserable that I ended up just like getting up and going to sleep on a couch because it was just too hot. So jokes on the producers. I'm sure they wanted something to happen, but maybe you should have put AC in your house and he would have gotten the result. But yeah, I mean, I'm not proud of that moment. I stand behind the fact that I guess I like crossed some lines and boundaries. Anyways, you can go listen to the X on the Beach episode to know more about that. Let's talk about like my partnership with Voldemort, because I feel like that's something I've talked about my experience on the challenge. I've talked about dating after the challenge, but I mean, I feel like what people are curious about is what was it like being, I guess, partners with that person, partners with someone who had won 7 times. It was interesting. I just remember, going back kind of on the topic of I left X on the Beach in a quote unquote relationship that kind of started as a TV relationship. Anyways, we all know I did not handle that the way that I should have. But me knowing, I'm a smart gal. I like to think I am. I graduated with honors from the University of Texas. That does not really mean anything, but it makes me feel better saying it. But I knew going into the challenge house, look, I'm not dumb. I think I'm a flirty girl. I think they knew what my character was. And I think that they wanted me to go into the challenge house and make bad decisions and flirt with a bunch of guys, knowing that they could air that I was in a relationship from X on the Beach. So I went on trying my hardest to not have that happen. I was like, I'm here to compete. I'm going to be an athletic prodigy. I'm going to win, and I'm not going to let boys or drama get in the way of that. So once I picked Voldemort as a partner, I remember I really was trying. I was trying to be a good girl. I kept being like, oh, like, yeah, like I left X on the beach in a relationship. I got to figure that out when I get home. And this should have been a red flag as to maybe why you shouldn't date this person. But I just remember saying that and then being like, yeah, no, you don't have a boyfriend anymore. And at the time I like kind of laughed and I thought it was cute, funny, flirtatious banter. And instead it's like, no, that's like such a boundary cross that someone just blatantly is like, no, I don't care. I'm going to put my hand on your leg. I'm going to be flirty. And I remember we had a mud wrestling challenge, which, by the way, that's when I should have known that I made a big mistake with that partnership, because we had a mud wrestling challenge, and that was one of the few that I really, really vividly remember. So picture this. Partner has to go grab a ball. They hand it off to the girl. You then go in a mud pit. You have to take the ball across the mud pit, and then you're safe, right? Seems very easy. Yeah, it's easy until all the girls decide to team up on you. And because they don't like your partner and they want to get you guys out because whatever, they're a threat. All the girls look at me, laser beams in their eyes as soon as I get this ball. And I had like 4 girls just completely tackle me into the mud, like full force. At one point, I think I had someone's like knee on my chest. Someone's trying to grab the ball from me. I'm like being pushed down into the mud. Like I'm having mud like close in on my vision. I was like, I'm going to die here. Meanwhile, I could have just let go of the ball and let them have it, but I'm such a stubborn person. I was like, no. And then finally, I remember my partner was like, dude, you got to let go of the ball. Anyways, that's how I should have known it was not going to go in my favor. But I'm covered in mud. And I just remember going to like wash off. And my partner at the time, like literally is like taking the hose and like pulling up on my shirt, like hosing me off, pulling up in the back of my pants, like hosing me off. And I'm like, at the time, I know, being like a young 24-year-old, like kind of getting, I don't know, flirted with. And I obviously was a bit into them and I thought that they were cute. At the time, I was like, oh, this is like fun, flirty banter. And now looking back, I'm like, inappropriate. Like, what? Like, why did I not see that this was like such a boundary crossed and a line crossed and maybe not seen as okay? I don't know. At the time, I just like blew it off and I was like, oh, like they want to flirt with me. Oh my gosh, silly little naive 24-year-old Morgan. Lessons were definitely learned. Obviously, I had to learn them the hard way later in life, but I just remember things like that. Obviously, now as a 29-year-old, I look back and I'm like, oh my goodness gracious, like what was happening on that TV show? Okay, so that was kind of more about my partnership. I don't know. I have a hard time even talking about that because at the time I felt so differently than I feel now. So yeah, it's really easy. Obviously, if you follow my history, and I dated that person and we broke up in a pretty gnarly way and I went through a lot of trauma. Yeah, obviously now looking back, I don't have pleasant things to say, but I also don't want to take away the fact that at the time, I didn't think anything was wrong. Like I was so just into it and immediately smitten, and I don't know. I don't know. I just feel the need to say that, but I do remember kind of being like gaslit even back then, like sitting on the bus being like really trying to stick to my word and be this girl who had a boyfriend from another TV show and like wasn't going to cheat on him and all this stuff. So I kept being like, yeah, oh my God, we are just friends, partner, we are friends and I'm going to do right. And then one day I just remember they're like, oh my God, like say the word platonic friends one more time. And then I kind of was like, what? And they just like gave me the silent treatment the rest of the bus ride home. And in that moment, all I wanted to do was get their approval. And I think that is kind of where I realized I went wrong in the relationship, is that continued to happen the rest of the relationship. But yeah, at the time I was just like, what? Like, why you don't want to talk to me? And why are you not giving me attention? And you're my partner. I feel like we need to communicate. And it was all because I said like, I wanted to be platonic friends. What's wrong with the word platonic? So, hindsight's again, 2020, but I don't know. We want to run a little tangent with that one, but let's talk about what challenge days look like. Okay, so we went through partners, who I picked, the challenge house, which there's miserable and atrocious. Challenge days are interesting. Very, very long. And what I feel like a lot of people don't realize is how long they last. Like you leave, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5. You sit on the bus. You have to wear your challenge little gear. At this point, you probably know who is being thrown in, because if there's like an inkling that you go in, you have to wear like your jersey. So yeah, they last a long time. And what you don't know is sometimes they'll go until like midnight, 1 a.m. Like they can last, oh my God, hours. They explain the rules to you. TJ does like his little spiel. But what's crazy is it's like kind of casual. If I'm thinking in my head watching the show, I would think it's such a big production. You would think that TJ has to rehearse all these lines. Like he kind of just says it once. It's very casual. You throw in who you want to throw in. They walk down and then they start competing. And then what's crazy is once you lose, which plot twist, in case you didn't figure it out, we lost in the second elimination. You would think that there's like a big production and all that. No, once you get eliminated, you literally, TJ's like, all right, you guys are out. You wave to your friends, you walk out, and then that's that. It's actually like the most insanely casual thing. I just remember walking out and everything was happening in slow motion because I really was so insanely disappointed. I was just mortified. I was like, I was the only one from my cast on X on the Beach to get pulled on. Like, I let everyone down. I wanted to, at least make it to a final. Oh my God, so embarrassed. And I just remember losing. TJ looking at us being like, well, sorry guys, your time here is up. And I kind of looked up at all the people in the stands and everything happened in slow motion. And then I was just walking out. And then you walk out and there's like a bunch of random cars and producers and they're just like casually talking to you. They ask you a few questions and then you get in a car and then you leave. And that's it. And that is your existence on the challenge. You do have to do like exit interviews. So on our season, they took us to a little house in the middle of nowhere and you stay there because you obviously can't stay in the house with other people, but you do get to go in, pack up all your stuff. So I just remember I was like packing up my stuff. The house is empty and I wrote Maddie a note and I'm pretty sure I wrote Natalie Negrotti a note. I don't even know what I said. Just like, love you, girl. Good luck. I'm like, why did I write a note? Like we're pen pals or something. I don't know. It was so lame. We leave. You go to this little random house. You have to do hours of exit interviews. So once you get eliminated, you're sad, you're bummed. You have to go put on a full face of makeup, a whole entire outfit. You don't get to sleep and you do probably 4 to 5 hours of interviews sitting in a chair. Yeah. And then I just remember, so I left to go do my interview. You're staying obviously with your partner. We had 2 separate rooms. I get back to the house and my partner had fallen asleep, not in his bed, but he had come to my bedroom and conveniently just decided to park it in my bed, which again, at the time I was like, oh my God, fun. Now I'm like, what the hell is wrong with me? But anyways, I ended up dating that person for 3 years. From there, what a lot of people don't know about the challenge is the challenge or MTV will fly you home from anywhere in the world. So you get a one-way ticket, but they don't say when. It's not like you get eliminated and they immediately book your flight. You can stay for a month if you want to. You can go to Europe. You can go to Antarctica, I guess, and they will book you a flight home from there. So I was so bummed. Oh my God. I just remember being depressed. I didn't want to turn on my phone. I didn't want to talk to my parents. I just was so upset I got eliminated so early. So we decided to travel afterwards. So I was like, why the hell not? What do I have to lose? I was banking on being gone for months. It's now been 2 weeks. I'm not going to turn my phone, whatever, we'll travel. So we ended up going to the most random locations. Made my way, we stayed in Nambia. So, I mean, it is pretty cool. And now looking back, I can say that I rode ATVs down sand dunes in Namibia, Africa. I drank beer while looking out at miles and miles of sand dunes, being like, where the hell am I right now? I was with someone that I had known for 14 days. I'm now traveling the world with them, which is a crazy scenario, but at the time it seemed fun. And you know what? I don't know. I feel like I've talked some shit on this podcast, but I don't really have any regrets. I really, really don't. I actually am so thankful for the time I had there and the memories. And I just really do think everything happens for a reason. And I don't know, without all that, I would not be sitting on this chair right now. Then tell me how we ended up in Mauritius. You're like, where the hell is Mauritius? Trust me, I did not know either. It is a tiny little island off the coast of Madagascar. But if you are looking for the most stunning place you've ever seen in your whole entire life, great for honeymoons, I highly recommend Mauritius. And then from there, tell me how we ended up in the Middle East. I went to Qatar, which is another random destination. Anytime I tell someone, I'm like, oh my God, have you been to Qatar? They're like, why have you been there? I'm like, well, let me tell you the story behind that. I was filming a TV show and then I got eliminated and then I ended up there. I did not initially want to go to Qatar. My goal was to go see the pyramids in Egypt. So that's where we wanted to go. But at the time, there was a flight ban. Apparently, like you could not fly from Mauritius to Egypt specifically. Don't know why. So we just randomly picked another destination on the map, closed our eyes and said, what is close to Egypt? Qatar. Which is a really cool place. But now looking back, I'm like, why? Like we could have gone to Dubai, could have gone, I actually don't really know what else is, we could have gone to Dubai. I don't know really what else is over there. Also, fun fact, speaking of geography, when I got eliminated, my challenge involved geography. So clearly I'm not great at that. We're going to backtrack a little bit because the challenge was a ginormous world map. And you and your partner had to I had to run flags of like certain countries to them. They had to climb a rock wall and place the flag in the country on a map. Let me tell you, seems easy, right? You're like, oh, I know where Canada is. I know where Mexico is. I know where China is. Do you know where the flag of Bangladesh goes on a blank map? No one would. Now looking back on it, I wish that I would have been climbing. I actually think that we would have won because I am a lot more nimble and agile and lighter. So I think I could have climbed a little bit faster. But as you guys know, I did not have much say in that partnership. I actually could not get a single word in ever. So I was like, I'll be the flag runner. Anyways, we did not do well. Also, we had one side of the house working against us. So that's what's kind of crazy about the challenge is there's all your cast members up, like looking down on you in the arena. And they're not quiet. They can shout answers. They can help you out. They can tell you strategy, all this stuff. So it really is a ginormous, I don't know, social experiment as well, because you want people on your side in the house who will help you out. So it's not just a physical game, which is kind of my bad. That's what I was expecting when I got there. Anyways, fast forward, Qatar. Went to Qatar. Yeah, had a great time there and then went back home. And that was my time on the challenge. That's really it. Went back home, and as you guys know, I ended up dating Voldemort, my partner from the show. From there, I guess it was like 2.5, maybe 3 years. I don't know the timeline exactly, but they were a huge part of my life. Obviously, didn't end up well. If you've been listening to this podcast, you kind of know that. But I don't know. I am thankful for the person I am now, that person had to go through all the different scenarios, had to go through the challenge and being in Nambia and Qatar and Africa and dating and all that to get to where I am now. So I am super thankful. I feel like especially online, I often talk about my dislike for MTV. It's like I don't love them. I really don't. But at the same time, I am thankful. I don't ever want people to think like I'm not grateful for that experience. I really am. I think a lot of people would absolutely die to go on these shows. So I am thankful for it. I don't feel the need to do it again. And in case you're wondering and listening, they're like, why don't you go back on the show? Like, do they call you? They do still call. I think I got a call actually for this last season, and it wasn't their normal casting director because I have her number saved. It was like a random one. So of course I answer, and I just immediately, they asked like, hey, like we're asking your availability for whatever season. I just start busting out laughing. And I was like, are you new? And they're like, yeah, we are. And I was like, oh, I feel like, yeah, obviously the old people know my answer by now. But I was like, no, not for me. I had actual choice words to say. Cause I don't know. I think who they cast and who they protect specifically in that network is interesting. And I don't necessarily think it is okay. I think that, anyways, I'll save that for another day, what I think. But essentially, I said no. The only way I would go back, because people do ask me this a lot, I would go back if they paid me the amount that I know that they pay certain challenge cast members. That's the only way I could justify absolutely throwing my mental health out the window to do that, because that is what would happen. I'm aware, I'm not silly. I know that they would put me back because of my history with certain members on the show. I know that it would be a great plot line, storyline. I'm like, that would make my mental health suffer. I'm in such a good place in my life where I like who I am. I like the self-work I've done. I like the therapy that I've done. I love my business. I'm comfortable. I have friends in Nashville. I, am making more now than I was ever doing reality TV. So I'm like, why would I throw all that away? I would love to go back and compete. Don't get me wrong on that. I think I actually would do very, very well with the competitions. I would love to just see how I would do in a freaking final. I'm not going to lie, guys. I'm saying it on the podcast. I low-key, I think 1% of me wants to do it just to prove a point, just to say that I could. But again, for me to go for $1,500 a week is not enough. Like, I would lose money doing that and not being able to run my business, run my Instagram, have all the social deals I have, losing out on that for a couple months. I'm like, I would lose out on so much money. So that's kind of where I'm at now. But you know what? I used to say never. Now I'm going to say never say never. I think it's still like a 99.9% chance that I wouldn't do it, but I don't know. I always say, if you pay me enough, I will throw my mental health out the window and do it. So we'll see. And yeah, that was my time on MTV's The Challenge, War of the Worlds. I think that's all the details I got for that. And my throat, as I'm a little bit under the weather, is screaming at me right now. I'm like, I just made a big mistake. I'm not going to be able to talk tomorrow. But yeah, guys, I hope you enjoyed that. I hope that kind of answers some of your questions, some of the behind the scenes of what it's like to film a show, what it's like to be on The Challenge. Hope I didn't spill too much unnecessary tea. I'm going to listen to this back and be like, good God, Morgan. But I don't know. That was my experience. And I think I'm officially done now. I did X on the Beach. I think I talked about Big Brother. And I think now we've done the challenge. We've hit the trifecta on this podcast. So now we're locking the door on reality TV. I'm taking that key and I'm throwing it away. So I guess now we'll just have to talk about other random things that go on in my life. But yeah, I'm tapping out on the reality TV stuff. So I lied. I actually just texted Laurel the other day and I was like, will you come on my podcast? So I'm sure she will come on and we will talk more about the challenge. So ignore me for now. But guys, that was fun. That's it. I'll see everyone next week and thanks for listening. Thanks so much for listening to the Your Internet Best Friend podcast. It's been real. It's been fun. And I will see everyone here next week. In the meantime, do all the podcast things. Like, subscribe, give me a 5-star review if you please. And catch up with me on social media at Morgan Lee Willette. Bye, besties.